Captain Dongwu stood on the bridge of the Indomitable Will and looked at the Imperial ship on his screen. After 400 years of planning, he was finally face to face with the enemy again. The Korvaxi vessel looked exactly like the ones that had destroyed Earth, all crystal and glowing lights built to show off Imperial power. But Dongwu was not impressed. He had seen what those ships could really do. He had grown up hearing stories from the survivors who escaped Earth's destruction. His own grandmother had been there when the Imperial fleet turned humanity's homeworld into burning rock. "Commander, So Young, what's our tactical status?" he asked. So Young looked up from her station. She was young for her rank, but she had earned her place through skill, not politics. Her family had been military for generations, keeping the dream of return alive even when it seemed impossible. "All systems ready, Captain. The fleet is in position and waiting for your orders. Chief Engineer J-Ho reports the fusion reactors are running at full power." Dongwu nodded. The Indomitable Will was the most advanced ship humanity had ever built. 15 kilometers of cutting-edge technology, housing 8,000 people who had trained their entire lives for this moment. The ship's hull was made from materials that could bend light around them, making them invisible. Their weapons could punch through any known armor. Their shields could adapt to any attack. But the real advantage was not in their technology. It was in their knowledge. For 4 centuries, humans had been watching the Empire. They had learned every weakness, mapped every trade route, and identified every corrupt official. They knew things about the Korvaxi that the Korvaxi did not know about themselves. "The Imperial Admiral is requesting another communication," reported Lieutenant Sung Min from the communication station. "Put him through." Admiral Tae Min appeared on the screen again. He looked worried now, which was good. Worried enemies made mistakes. "Captain Dongwu," the Zilani officer began. "I need to understand what's happening here. My orders are to maintain peace in this sector. If your people want to negotiate with the Empire, there are proper channels." Dongwu almost laughed. "Proper channels? Admiral, your Empire destroyed our homeworld. They killed billions of our people. They turned survivors into slaves on mining worlds. What exactly should we negotiate about?" That was 4 centuries ago. The current emperor had nothing to do with those decisions. Perhaps some arrangement could be reached. The current emperor is the great-grandson of the one who ordered Earth's destruction. He sits on a throne built from the bones of conquered worlds. What arrangement could possibly make up for that? Tae Min was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Less official, more personal. "What do you want me to do? I'm one admiral with one ship. I can't change Imperial policy." "You can choose a side," Dongwu replied. "Your people, the Zilani, were conquered just like mine were. The Empire took your world, scattered your families, and turned your children into soldiers. Does that sound like the actions of a benevolent ruler?" The question hit home. Dongwu could see it in the admiral's face. Tae Min had probably never thought about his own people's conquest in those terms. The Empire was very good at making their victims grateful for their slavery. "The Empire gave me opportunities," Tae Min said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I rose through the ranks based on merit. My people are valued members of Imperial society." "Your people are tools," Dongwu said bluntly. "Useful tools. Treated, well, as long as they serve faithfully. But still tools. When did you last visit the Zilani homeworld, Admiral? When did you last speak your native language or practice your people's traditions?" Tae Min did not answer, which was answer enough. "Let me show you something," Dongwu continued. He gestured to So Young, who brought up a series of images on the communication link. "These are pictures from your homeworld, taken last week by one of our scout ships." The images showed a planet covered in Imperial structures. Where once there had been Zilani cities with their distinctive curved architecture, now there were only gray Imperial buildings. Where once there had been forests, sacred to Zilani culture, now there were mining operations. The few Zilani visible in the pictures looked tired and worn down. "This is what the Empire calls valued membership," Dongwu said. "Your people work in factories making weapons for their conquerors. Your children learn Imperial history instead. of their own. Your elders die without passing on the old stories because speaking them is discouraged. Taemin stared at the images without speaking. His 4 hands were clenched into fists. I know this is hard to see. Dongwu continued, his voice gentler now. The Empire is very skilled at making people forget what they've lost. They give you positions and titles and tell you that you're valued, but they never give you the one thing that matters most, which is the right to say no. The communication link went quiet. On both ships, crews watched their commanders and waited to see what would happen next. Finally, Taemin spoke. Even if everything you say is true, what can be done about it? The Empire has ruled for 3,000 years. They have millions of ships, countless worlds, resources beyond imagination. You have, what? A few hundred ships? We have something more valuable than numbers, Dongwu replied. We have the truth, and we have allies you don't know about. What allies? Instead of answering, Dongwu gave another signal to So Young. Suddenly, the space around both ships filled with new contacts. But these were not human ships. They were Imperial vessels, cruisers, destroyers, and support craft, all bearing the markings of different conquered races. Allow me to introduce Captain Kyungja of the Zilani Liberation Fleet, Dongwu said as a new face appeared on the screen. She was clearly Zilani, but her uniform was different from Imperial standard. Instead of the Empire's golden symbols, she wore silver stars. Admiral Taemin, she said formally. It's good to see a fellow Zilani again, even if you serve the wrong flag. Taemin's face went through several different expressions: surprise, confusion, and then understanding. You're rebels. We're free, Zilani, Kyungja corrected. We chose to stop serving the Empire and start serving our own people. Many others have made the same choice. More faces appeared on the communication link. A Halon commander named Dae Ho, a Viridian captain called Hyo Jin, officers from a dozen different species, all wearing uniforms that mixed their traditional colors with human symbols of alliance. You see, Admiral, Dongwu explained, we haven't been sitting idle for 400 years. We've been talking to other conquered peoples. We've been sharing technology and ideas. We've been building something new. A rebellion that size would have been detected, Taemin protested. Imperial intelligence would know, Captain Kyungja smiled sadly. Imperial intelligence knows what the Empire wants them to know. When you've been in charge for 3,000 years, you stop looking for real threats. You start believing your own propaganda about being invincible. But this could destroy everything, Taemin said. The Empire brings order. Without it, there would be chaos, war, suffering. There's already suffering, Dongwu pointed out. The Empire just hides it well, and as for chaos, he gestured to the mixed fleet surrounding them. Look around. Humans, Zilani, Halon, and a dozen other races working together peacefully. Does this look like chaos to you? Taemin studied the ships on his scanner. They were organized in perfect formation, with clear command structures and communication protocols. It looked exactly like an Imperial fleet except for one thing. Every species was there by choice. What happens now? The Admiral asked. That depends on you, Dongwu replied. You can report this encounter to Imperial High Command. Tell them exactly what you saw here. They'll probably send a larger fleet to destroy us. And then? Then we'll destroy them, and the next fleet after that, and the one after that. We'll keep fighting until the Empire realizes that their time is over. Taemin considered this. Or you can think about what you've seen here today. Talk to your crew. Ask them if they're happy serving an empire that conquered their home worlds. Ask them if they want to spend their lives fighting to keep other people enslaved. The communication ended, leaving Taemin alone with his thoughts. Around him, his bridge crew worked quietly, but he could feel their eyes on him. They had heard everything. They had seen the images of their conquered worlds. They knew their captain was facing an impossible choice. In the depths of space, 2 fleets faced each other. One served an empire built on conquest and oppression. The other served an idea that people should be free to choose their own destiny. The war for the galaxy was about to begin. The stars looked the same as they always had. cold, distant, and endless. Admiral Taman stood on the bridge of his warship and watched them through the big window. He had been doing this job for 30 years. 30 years of flying through space, keeping order for the Empire. 30 years of never seeing anything new or exciting. The Korvaxi Empire ruled everything. Every star, every planet, every living thing in the galaxy belonged to them. They had been in charge for over 3,000 years. Taman could not imagine a time when things were different. Nobody could. The Empire was too strong, too smart, too powerful to ever fall. His ship was called the Eternal Dominion. It was huge, 3 kilometers long and made of special crystal that could absorb enemy fire. The crystal glowed with blue light, and weapons stuck out from every side. 5,000 people worked on the ship. They came from different planets, but they all served the Empire now. Taman was not originally from the Empire's main race. He was Zilani. His people had been conquered 200 years ago, but the Empire was fair to those who served well. They gave him a good education, trained him to be an officer, and eventually made him an admiral. He commanded respect from everyone on his ship. "Sir," said Lieutenant Hyajin from her station. She was also Zilani, with the typical 4 arms and green skin of their people. "I'm getting strange readings from the Kepler 442 system." Taman walked over to look at her screen. Numbers and symbols moved across it in patterns he did not understand. "What kind of readings?" "Energy signatures I've never seen before. Something big is out there. Really big." Hyajin's voice had worry in it. "The computer says it's impossible, but the numbers don't lie. Show me." The main screen changed to show a map of nearby space. A red dot pulsed in the Kepler system, about 2 days away at fast speed. The numbers next to it made Taman's eyes go wide. "That can't be right," he said. "Nothing is that big. Check your equipment." Hyajin ran the tests again. The same numbers came back. "Sir, if this is accurate, we're looking at something 15 kilometers long. Maybe bigger." Taman felt cold inside his chest. The biggest ships in the Empire were only 4 kilometers long. Those were the Emperor's personal warships, and only 5 of them existed. What could be bigger than that? "Set course for Kepler 442, he ordered. "Full speed, and send a message to High Command. Tell them we're investigating an unknown contact." The ship turned and jumped into faster-than-light travel. The stars stretched into lines, then disappeared as they entered the space between normal space. Taman spent the next 2 days reading every file he could find about that system. Kepler 442 had nothing special about it. No planets with life, no valuable minerals, no imperial bases. It was empty space. So what was hiding there? When they dropped back into normal space near Kepler 442, Taman's questions got worse instead of better. His sensors showed nothing. Empty space, just like the files said. But Hyajin's instrument still detected that massive energy signature. "It's like something huge is there, but invisible," she reported. "The energy is definitely real. But I can't see what's making it." "Could it be a new type of weapon?" asked Commander Boram, the ship's security chief. Taman did not answer. He was thinking about old stories. Very old stories that most people had forgotten. Stories about races that had fought the Empire long ago and lost. Most of those races were gone now. Their planets were empty or filled with new people loyal to the Empire. "Sir!" Hyajin suddenly shouted. "Something's happening!" The space in front of them began to change. The stars seemed to bend and twist. Then, slowly, a shape began to appear. It was like watching a ghost become solid. First just an outline, then more details, until finally a complete ship hung in space before them. Taman had never seen anything like it. The ship was indeed massive, longer than 5 Imperial cruisers placed end to end. But it looked nothing like Imperial ships. Where Korvaxi vessels were made of glowing crystal, this ship was dark metal. Where Imperial designs were round and flowing, this ship had sharp angles and straight lines. It looked dangerous in a way that made everyone on the bridge step back from their stations. "By the gods," whispered Boram. "What is that thing?" Before anyone could answer, the alien ship sent them a message. The communication system crackled to life, and a voice spoke in perfect galactic standard, the language everyone in the Empire used. "This is Captain Dongwu of the Terran Federation warship Indomitable Will. We have returned." The bridge went completely silent. Taemin felt like someone had hit him in the stomach. Terran? That was impossible. Everyone knew about the Terrans. They had been a young race that lived on a small blue planet called Earth. The Empire had found them 400 years ago. The Terrans had refused to join peacefully, so the Empire had been forced to destroy them. Every Imperial child learned about it in school. The Terran pacification was one of the Empire's greatest victories, but if the Terrans were all dead, who was talking to them? "Open a channel," Taemin ordered. His voice sounded strange even to himself. The main screen changed to show the inside of the alien ship. A man sat in what looked like a command chair. He had the typical appearance of humans: 2 arms, smooth skin, short dark hair. He wore a uniform that was dark blue with silver markings. Behind him, Taemin could see other humans working at stations similar to his own crew. "I am Admiral Taemin of the Korvaxi Third Fleet," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "You claim to be Terran, but our records show that your people were eliminated centuries ago." The human captain smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "Eliminated? That's an interesting word choice, Admiral. Is that what they're calling genocide these days?" Taemin felt uncomfortable. The Terran pacification was necessary. Your people refused to accept Imperial rule. They chose war. "We chose freedom," Captain Dongwu replied. "And you're right about one thing. Many of us died. Our homeworld was destroyed. Our colonies were burned. Billions of our people were killed." The captain's voice stayed calm, but Taemin could hear anger underneath it. "But some of us escaped. Some of us survived. And we've spent the last 400 years getting ready for this moment." Getting ready for what? To come home, to reclaim what was taken from us, and to free every other race that the Empire has enslaved since then. Taemin's training told him to laugh at such a ridiculous threat. One ship, no matter how big, could not challenge the entire Empire. But something about the way the human spoke made him hesitate. There was confidence there, knowledge, like someone who held cards that others could not see. "You're outnumbered by millions to 1, Taemin said. "Even if your ship is powerful, it's still just one ship." Captain Dongwu's smile grew wider. Who said anything about just one ship? The space around them suddenly filled with new contacts. Taemin's sensors went crazy as dozens, then hundreds of ships appeared from nowhere. They had been hidden, just like the first one. All different sizes, but all with that same dark metal design. All clearly human. "You see, Admiral," Dongwu continued, "we didn't just survive, we learned, we grew stronger, we built better ships and better weapons. And most importantly, we never forgot what the Empire took from us." Taemin stared at the screen full of enemy ships. His own vessel, which had seemed so powerful that morning, now felt very small and very alone. "What do you want?" "Justice," the human captain said simply. "The Empire has ruled through fear and violence for 3,000 years. It's time for that to end. The Empire has brought peace and order to the galaxy. The Empire has brought slavery and death. Ask the Zilani how much they enjoy their peace. Ask the Halon about their order." Those words hit Taemin hard. He was Zilani himself. He knew his people's history. Before the Empire came, they had been free. They had their own government, their own culture, their own dreams. The Empire had taken all of that away. But they had been given other things in return. Safety, purpose, a place in something bigger than themselves, hadn't they? "I can see you're thinking about it," Dongwu observed. "Good. That's the first step toward understanding. We're not here to destroy everything, Admiral. We're here to give people a choice, something the Empire has never offered." The transmission ended, leaving Taemin staring at a blank screen. Around him, his crew looked scared and confused. They had all grown up believing the Empire was invincible. They had been taught that Imperial rule was the natural order of things. but now hanging in space before them was proof that everything they believed might be wrong. The news reached the imperial capital faster than anyone expected. Emperor Vexhai sat on his crystal throne in the great palace on Corvax Prime, reading reports that made no sense. Humans were supposed to be extinct. The Terran pacification had been complete and thorough. Every human world had been destroyed or occupied. Every human ship had been hunted down and eliminated. So why was his Grand Admiral telling him that a fleet of human warships had appeared in the outer systems? "This is impossible," the Emperor declared. His voice echoed through the massive throne room. At 800 years old, he was one of the oldest Corvaxi alive, and he remembered the human war personally. "I watched their homeworld burn. I saw the last of their ships destroyed." Grand Admiral Nari stood before the throne, her own forearms crossed in a gesture of respect. She was the most capable military leader in the Empire, which was why the Emperor trusted her with difficult truths. "The evidence is clear, Your Majesty. Admiral Tayman's report includes sensor data and communication records. The ships are real, and they are definitely human in origin." "Then some humans escaped our initial attack," Vexhai said dismissively. "A few survivors hiding in deep space. Send a fleet to eliminate them." "With respect, Your Majesty, it's not that simple." Nari activated a holographic display that showed the tactical information from Tayman's encounter. "These are not refugee ships. They demonstrate technology superior to our own. Their stealth systems are beyond anything we've developed. Their ship designs suggest centuries of independent advancement." The Emperor studied the display with growing anger. The human ship was indeed massive, larger than anything in the Imperial fleet. But size was not what worried him most. It was the implications. If these humans have been hiding for 4 centuries, building an advanced civilization, Nari continued. "Then, they've been planning revenge," Vexhai finished. "How many ships?" "Unknown. Admiral Tayman reported hundreds appearing from stealth, but that may only be a fraction of their total force." The Emperor stood from his throne and walked to the great window that looked out over his capital city. Millions of beings from dozens of species lived and worked below, all serving the Empire faithfully. The sight usually filled him with satisfaction, but today he saw something different. He saw potential enemies, potential rebels. What of the other species in Tayman's report? The Zilani and Halon vessels that appeared alongside the humans. "That's our biggest concern," Nari admitted. "If subject species are joining with the humans, it suggests widespread discontent. Our intelligence networks are investigating, but so far they found no evidence of organized rebellion. Because they're not looking in the right places," Vexhai said grimly. "Double the security on all subject worlds, increase monitoring of communications, and prepare the First Fleet for combat operations." While the Emperor planned his response, the humans were already moving. Captain Minho guided his ship, the Defiant Dawn, through the space around the Zilani homeworld. His vessel was smaller than Dongwu's flagship, designed for stealth and infiltration rather than direct combat. "We're in position," reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Yoon Suk. "Imperial patrols are following their usual patterns. We should have a 12-minute window." Minho nodded. "Begin transmission." The message went out on all frequencies, cutting through Imperial communication networks like a knife. It was simple, direct, and devastating. "People of Zella," Minho's voice broadcast to every receiver on the planet. "This is Captain Minho of the Terran Federation. We know you have been told that humans were eliminated 400 years ago. As you can see, reports of our death have been greatly exaggerated." On the planet below, millions of Zilani stopped what they were doing to listen. In factories and farms, in schools and offices, people gathered around communication devices to hear words they had never expected. "Your leaders tell you that you are valued members of the Imperial family," the broadcast continued. "But when did you last see your traditional architecture in your cities? When did you last hear your ancient songs taught in schools? When did you last have the right to choose your own government?" The question struck home because everyone knew the answers. Zilani culture had been slowly erased over 2 centuries of imperial rule. not through violence, but through policies that made traditional ways seem old-fashioned and irrelevant. We are not here to conquer you or replace the Empire with human rule, Minho continued. We are here to offer you something the Empire never has, the choice to be free. Imperial security forces moved quickly to shut down the transmission, but the damage was done. The message had been heard. More importantly, it had been recorded and was already spreading through underground networks that Imperial intelligence had never suspected existed. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Commander Yunji's stealth frigate, the Shadow of Terra, appeared in orbit around industrial worlds, documenting working conditions and broadcasting the footage to neighboring systems. Captain Jawan's cruiser delivered supplies to hidden rebel bases that had been operating in secret for decades. The humans were not conquering, they were revealing. Every contact they made exposed another lie the Empire had told its subjects. On Korvax Prime, the Emperor's advisors brought him increasingly disturbing reports. Riots had broken out on 6 worlds. 3 governors had been forced to declare martial law. Most troubling of all, several Imperial military units had refused orders to fire on civilian protesters. It's spreading faster than we anticipated, Grand Admiral Nari reported during an emergency council meeting. The humans aren't just militarily superior, they're waging a propaganda war, and they're winning. Then we respond with overwhelming force, declared General Wu Jin, the Empire's chief military strategist. Deploy the First Fleet immediately, find their main base and destroy it before this rebellion can spread further. Emperor Vex Hai considered the options. The First Fleet was the Empire's most powerful military force, 200 of the most advanced warships available, commanded by his adopted son, Prince Jinwu. It had never failed in battle. Very well, he decided. Send Prince Jinwu with the First Fleet. Full authorization for planet-killer weapons if necessary. This rebellion ends now. The decision was exactly what the humans had been expecting. Deep in space, aboard a hidden command ship, Commander Hai Wan of Terran Intelligence received reports from agents placed throughout the Imperial government. She had spent 30 years building intelligence networks, recruiting sources, and mapping Imperial decision-making processes. They're taking the bait, she reported to Admiral Dongwu over encrypted communication. Prince Jinwu is mobilizing the First Fleet. They'll be looking for our main base. Which base will they find? Dongwu asked. The one we want them to find. Decoy Base 7 in the Outer Rim. It's big enough to look important, but expendable. Enough that we can sacrifice it. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. For months, the humans had been building false bases in remote systems, making them look like major military installations. Imperial scouts would find one, report back, and the Empire would send its fleet to attack what they thought was humanity's center of operations. Meanwhile, the real human fleet would be elsewhere, coordinating with rebel forces and liberated worlds to prepare for the Empire's inevitable response. What about civilian casualties? Dongwu asked. The question showed why humans had spent centuries building alliances instead of just superior weapons. They still cared about the innocent. The decoy base is unmanned except for automated systems. If Prince Jinwu destroys it, he'll be destroying empty buildings and recording equipment. Good. Any word from our friends in the Imperial fleet? Heiwan smiled. Admiral Taimin hasn't reported his encounter yet. He's been asking a lot of questions about Zelani history lately. I think he's starting to understand. Across the galaxy, the pieces were moving into position for the largest space battle in Imperial history. The Empire was preparing to crush what they thought was a small human rebellion. The humans were preparing to show the galaxy that the supposedly invincible Empire could be defeated, but the real battle would not be fought with weapons alone. It would be fought in the hearts and minds of every being who had ever dreamed of freedom. In his ready room aboard the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Taimin stared at images of his home world and tried to decide which side of history he wanted to be on. The choice would define not just his own fate, but the fate of billions of people throughout the galaxy. The Empire had been strong for 3,000 years, but strength built on oppression was not the same as strength built on justice. The humans had returned to teach that lesson, and the galaxy would never be the same. Prince Jinwu stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Imperial Glory, and watched his fleet prepare for battle. 200 ships surrounded him, the most powerful military force the Empire had ever assembled. Crystalline battleships that could destroy planets, cruisers armed with weapons that turned matter into energy, and support vessels carrying enough firepower to conquer entire star systems. The prince was young for his position, only 60 years old, but he had never lost a battle. His tactical genius was legendary throughout the Imperial military. Other officers studied his victories at the academy. Enemies feared the sight of his golden command banner. "Report, Admiral Seojun," he ordered his second-in-command. "All ships, ready for combat operations, Your Highness. Our scouts have located the human base in the Kepler 442 system. Intelligence suggests it's their primary construction facility." Jinwu nodded. The humans had made a mistake by revealing themselves too early. Now the Empire would crush them before their rebellion could spread further. It would be a quick, decisive victory that would remind the galaxy why the Korvaxi ruled. "Fleet, Formation Delta 7, he commanded. "All ships, maximum acceleration toward target system." The Imperial First Fleet jumped into faster-than-light travel, leaving behind a galaxy already beginning to change. On worlds throughout the Empire, people whispered about the human broadcasts. Secret meetings were held in hidden places. Old flags and symbols banned for centuries appeared on walls during the night. In the Kepler 442 system, the human decoy base waited. It looked impressive from a distance, massive structures that could house thousands of people, shipyards capable of building warships, defensive platforms bristling with weapons. But it was all for show. The buildings were empty. The shipyards held no ships. The weapons were fake. Commander Yansu monitored the base from a hidden observation post on a nearby asteroid. Her job was simple: make sure the Imperial fleet found what they expected to find, then escape before the shooting started. "Imperial ships dropping out of hyperspace," her sensor operator reported. "Count shows. By the ancestors, that's a lot of ships." Yansu watched her screens as 200 Imperial vessels appeared in space around the system. She had seen Imperial fleets before, but never anything this large. The prince was not taking any chances. "Begin evacuation protocol," she ordered. "All personnel to escape pods. We'll watch the show from a safe distance." Within minutes, the last humans had left the decoy base. Automated systems took over, making the facility look occupied and ready to fight. Signal generators created fake communications traffic. Holographic projectors made empty corridors appear full of people. Prince Jinwu studied the enemy base through his ship's sensors. It looked exactly like intelligence had predicted, a major military installation that could threaten Imperial security if allowed to grow. "Your Highness," Admiral Seojun reported, "the base is heavily defended. Their weapons appear similar to the technology we saw in Admiral Taimin's encounter. Numbers: 12 battle stations, 40 defensive platforms, and what appears to be a small fleet of escort vessels. The base itself is heavily armored." Jinwu smiled. The humans had built an impressive fortress, but they had made a critical error. They had concentrated their forces in one location, allowing the Empire to destroy everything in a single battle. "All ships, combat formation. Target the defensive platforms first, then the base itself. Show these humans why the Empire has ruled for 3,000 years." The battle began with a spectacular display of Imperial firepower. Energy beams that could melt asteroids struck the human defensive platforms. Plasma missiles that could crack moons slammed into the base's outer structures. The prince's tactical brilliance was on full display as he coordinated attacks from multiple angles. But something was wrong. The human defenses were not fighting back as hard as expected. Their return fire seemed weak, almost half-hearted. Worse, their ships were retreating instead of engaging the Imperial fleet. "They're running," Admiral Seojun observed. "Should we pursue?" Jinwu frowned. This did not match the intelligence reports about human military capability. The ship that had confronted Admiral Taimin had demonstrated superior technology. These defenders seemed barely competent. "Something's not right," he muttered. "Continue the attack," but maintained defensive formation. The Imperial fleet pressed forward systematically, destroying the human base, but as the battle continued, Jinwu became more suspicious. The enemy weapons looked advanced from a distance, but up close they seemed almost fake. The defensive platforms exploded too easily. The base itself showed damage patterns that suggested it was not as heavily armored as it appeared. Then his sensors detected something that made his blood freeze. Energy signatures approaching from multiple directions, massive ones. Ships were decloaking all around his fleet. "Contact! Multiple contacts!" his tactical officer shouted. "Ships appearing on all vectors." The main screen filled with new targets. Human warships, dozens of them appearing from perfect stealth. But these were not the same vessels they had been fighting. These ships were larger, more advanced and very clearly real. Leading them was a familiar sight. The massive human flagship from Admiral Taemin's report. The indomitable Will dropped its cloak directly in front of the Imperial glory, its weapons already powering up. "This is Admiral Sung Ho of the Terran Federation fleet," came a voice over the communication system. "Prince Jinwu, you are hereby charged with crimes against sentient life and violations of interstellar law. Surrender now and your crews will be treated according to the rules of war." Jinwu stared at the screen in shock. The human fleet outnumbered his own forces and had caught him in a perfect trap. But he was still a prince of the Empire. Surrender was not an option. "All ships engage enemy forces," he ordered. "Show them the power of the Imperial Navy." The real battle began with a fury that shook space itself. Imperial crystalline armor met human adaptive shielding. Energy weapons that had conquered 1,000 worlds struck hulls that seemed to absorb and redirect the damage. For the first time in centuries, Imperial forces faced an enemy that could fight back as equals. But the humans had advantages beyond technology. They had been studying Imperial tactics for 400 years. Every battle plan, every formation, every strategy the Empire used was known and countered before it could be effective. Admiral Sung Ho proved to be a tactical genius, equal to any in Imperial history. He split the human fleet into smaller groups that attacked from unexpected angles. He used the Empire's own formations against them, turning their strengths into weaknesses. Most devastating of all, he was not fighting alone. As the battle raged, more ships appeared to join the human fleet. Imperial vessels, but flying new flags. Zilani cruisers commanded by Captain Kyung-ja, Halon destroyers led by Commander Daiho. Ships from a dozen conquered races all fighting together against their former masters. Impossible. Prince Jinwu breathed as he watched his tactical display fill with rebel ships. Where did they all come from? Admiral Seojun's voice was grim. "Your Highness, we're receiving surrender demands from 23 Imperial vessels. Their crews are joining the rebels." The prince watched in horror as his own fleet began to turn against itself. Ships that had served the Empire for centuries suddenly switched sides, their crews choosing freedom over obedience. Captains who had sworn loyalty to the Emperor were now broadcasting messages about liberation and justice. In the center of the chaos, Admiral Taemin's ship, the Eternal Dominion, hung motionless. The Zilani admiral had not fired a shot in either direction. His crew watched the battle and waited for orders that did not come. On his bridge, Taemin stared at images of his home world and made the choice that would define the rest of his life. "Open a channel to all Imperial ships," he ordered. "This is Admiral Taemin of the Zilani Liberation Fleet. The Empire has lied to us for too long. Today we choose freedom." His words carried across the battlefield like wildfire. More Imperial. Ships switched sides. Entire squadrons joined the rebellion. The prince's magnificent fleet was falling apart from within. "Your Highness," Admiral Seojun urged, "we need to retreat. We can regroup and—" "No!" Jinwu shouted. "The First Fleet does not retreat. We fight until the end." But the end was already visible. Human technology proved superior in every category. Their weapons punched through Imperial shields like they were made of paper. Their own defenses adapted to Imperial attacks, making each successive shot less effective. Most importantly, they fought with a purpose that Imperial forces could not match. Every human ship carried crews who remembered stories of Earth's destruction. Every rebel vessel was crewed by people fighting to free their own worlds. The battle raged for 18 hours. When it finally ended, the Imperial First Fleet was destroyed. Some ships had been captured. Others had joined the rebellion voluntarily. A few had fought to the end and been destroyed by their own stubbornness. Prince Jinwu stood in the ruins of his bridge, looking at screens that showed nothing but human and rebel ships. His flagship was crippled, his fleet was gone, and his reputation as an unbeatable commander was shattered forever. "This is impossible," he repeated, but the evidence surrounded him. The throne room on Korvax Prime had never been so quiet. Emperor Vexhai sat in his crystal chair, staring at reports that told an impossible story. His first fleet was gone. Prince Jinwu was captured. Half the empire was in open rebellion. The Wu. News had spread across the galaxy faster than Imperial forces could contain it. On world after world, people took to the streets demanding freedom. Governors who had ruled for decades suddenly found themselves facing crowds that would not be silenced. Military units sent to restore order instead joined the protesters. "Your Majesty," Grand Admiral Nari said carefully, "we need to discuss our options." The Emperor looked older than his 800 years. The confident ruler who had commanded a galaxy that morning now seemed like a tired old being clinging to power that was slipping away. "What options?" he asked bitterly. "My greatest fleet is destroyed. My heir is a prisoner. Half my military has turned rebel. What exactly do you suggest?" Nari activated a holographic display showing the current state of Imperial space. Red zones marked areas in open rebellion. Yellow zones showed regions where Imperial control was questionable. Only a few green areas remained fully loyal, and those were mostly core Korvaxi worlds. "We still control significant military assets," she reported. "The second and third fleets remain loyal. We have planet-killer weapons that could end this rebellion quickly, by destroying entire worlds, if necessary. A few examples would remind the others what happens to those who oppose Imperial rule." The Emperor considered this option. Planet-killer weapons were the Empire's ultimate threat. Massive devices that could crack the crust of a world, making it uninhabitable. They had been used only rarely in the past, but they had always been effective. "Begin preparations," he decided. "Target the Zalani homeworld. If we destroy the rebels' most important ally, the others will surrender." The order went out through secure Imperial channels. Within hours, a planet-killer weapon was being moved toward the Zalani system. But the humans had been monitoring Imperial communications for centuries. They knew about the weapon before it had traveled half the distance to its target. Captain Dongwu received the warning aboard the Indomitable Will. His ship was part of a massive human fleet now gathering in liberated space. Hundreds of ships from dozens of species, all united in their determination to end Imperial rule. "They're going to destroy Zala," Commander So Young reported. "The planet killer will arrive in 6 hours." Dongwu felt cold anger in his chest. This was exactly what the Empire had done to Earth. When they could not maintain control through normal means, they simply destroyed everything. Billions of innocent people would die just to make a political point. "All ships, emergency acceleration. To the Zalani system," he ordered. "Signal the fleet. We will not allow another world to burn." The race across space was desperate and tense. The human fleet pushed their engines to dangerous levels, trying to reach Zela before the Imperial weapon could complete its terrible work. Ships that had never been designed to travel so fast strained their systems to the breaking point. They arrived just in time to see the planet-killer weapon emerging from faster-than-light travel. It was a massive device, 10 kilometers long and bristling with the energy projectors that would tear apart a world's surface. Escorting it were 50 Imperial warships, veterans of the Second Fleet. But the humans were not alone. Admiral Taemin's Liberation Fleet had reached the system first, placing themselves between the weapon and their homeworld. Zalani ships that had served the Empire for 2 centuries now faced Imperial forces in battle for the first time. "Imperial forces," Dongwu broadcast on all frequencies. "You are ordered to stand down immediately. Any attempt to deploy planet killer weapons against civilian populations will be met with overwhelming force." The Imperial commander, Admiral Ho-Jin of the Second Fleet was a career Corvaxi officer who had never questioned an Imperial order. "Human vessel, you are in violation of Imperial space. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. The only thing being destroyed today is that weapon," Dongwu replied. Final warning. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The humans deployed technology that seemed impossible, weapons that could phase through, shields and explode inside enemy ships, fighters controlled by artificial intelligence that could predict enemy movements, defensive systems that actually got stronger when attacked. But the real shock came when the planet-killer weapon itself was targeted. Human ships swarmed around it, their boarding parties cutting through its hull like it was made of paper. Within minutes, they had taken control of the device. Then, in a move that stunned everyone watching, they turned the weapon on an Imperial military base on a nearby moon. The same device that had been intended to destroy innocent civilians was used to eliminate a military target. The symbolism was powerful and clear. The Empire's ultimate weapon, wielded by the people they claimed to have exterminated, destroying Imperial infrastructure instead of innocent worlds. Admiral Ho-Jin's fleet fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. More importantly, they were fighting for an empire that was already crumbling. One by one, Imperial ships either switched sides or were captured by boarding parties. The news of the Second Fleet's defeat reached Korvax Prime within hours. Emperor Vex High received the reports in his private chambers, away from the advisors, who had been telling him what he wanted to hear instead of the truth. The empire was finished. 3 major fleets destroyed. Most subject worlds in rebellion. Even some core Korvaxi systems were experiencing unrest. The government that had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years was collapsing in a matter of weeks. A knock came at his door. "Enter," the Emperor said wearily. Grand Admiral Nari stepped inside, but she was not alone. Behind her came Captain Dongwu, flanked by human Marines. The Emperor was not surprised. He had been expecting this moment since the first reports of defeat arrived. "Your Majesty," Nari said formally, "I am placing you under arrest for crimes against sentient life. You will be tried before a tribunal of liberated worlds." Vex High looked at the human captain with curious eyes. "So you finally have your revenge?" "Earth is avenged," Dongwu shook his head. "This was never about revenge, it was about justice, about giving people the right to choose their own destiny." 6 months later, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The Korvaxi Empire was gone, replaced by the Galactic Federation, a democratic alliance where every species had an equal voice. Former Imperial World sent representatives to a council on New Harmony, a planet jointly administered by all member species. The War Crimes Tribunal had been swift but fair. Emperor Vex High was sentenced to life imprisonment, along with other Imperial leaders who had ordered atrocities. But many former Imperial officers, including Admiral Tae Min, were given positions in the new Federation government. Captain Dongwu, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, stood in the Federation Council chambers and watched delegates from 50 different species debate trade agreements and exploration missions. It was chaotic and sometimes frustrating, but it was also beautiful. For the first time in thousands of years, people were free to disagree without fear. "The first joint exploration mission is ready to launch," Commander So Young reported. "Captain, Yuna requests final departure clearance." Dongwu smiled. The Federation starship Unity was humanity's gift to the new galaxy, a vessel designed not for war but for discovery. Its crew included humans and former Imperial subjects, all working together to explore the unknown regions beyond the galactic rim. "Clearance granted," he said. "Tell them to find us new friends out there." As the Unity disappeared into faster-than-light travel, children from dozens of species played together in Federation schools. They learned about the old empire and its fall, but more importantly, they learned about cooperation and respect for differences. The Korvaxi Empire was indeed shattered beyond all repair, but from its ruins, something far better had taken its place. The galaxy was free, and it would never be enslaved again. In a small garden on New Harmony, a memorial stood to all those who had died under Imperial rule, humans who had perished when Earth burned. Zalani who had fought for their culture, Halon who had died in the mines, members of dozens of species who had dreamed of freedom. The inscription, written in every language of the Federation, was simple. They died so that others might choose to live free. And throughout the galaxy, billions of beings read those words and knew they were true.